Welcome to Your World Within Daily. I'm Eddie Pinero. And in this episode, we're going to look at a new type of motivation. Ask ourselves how we're incentivizing our action and whether we may or may not be leaving our greatest weapon on the table. So let's talk a little bit about flow today. As Daniel Pink says in his book, Drive, the new type of motivation, intrinsic motivation. Like so many concepts, right? He talks about it in the realm of business. But after all, businesses are just people. And this comes all the way down to the personal level as well. It's a very important concept. So I'm going to give you a quick kind of 101, right? He talks about 3 different types of motivation. The first one, survival, right? The need to sleep, eat, reproduce, push the species along, survive, okay? And we're not going to talk much about 1.0. We're going to talk about the other 2. 2.0, the carrot and the stick, reward and punishment. You do something great, you get a reward. You do something bad, you get punished. This is the parameters that, if you walk into any company in the world now, I mean, it's the most prominent idea structure. It's the same, it guides a lot of our actions on the individual level as well, right? 2.0, carrot and stick. And then you have 3.0, the new type of motivation, where you're doing something because you love it, where the activity is the reward, where there's flow, which is essentially you're doing something and you love it so much that you don't realize time goes by. Now, this is a piece of human motivation, or I should say a component of human motivation that is ignored because the reward's not right in front of our face. But the greatest things arguably ever created have come from this space. The exploratory, doing something because you're so interested, you don't want to stop doing it, that type of mindset, right? And so when it comes to incentive, right, it's not that the carrot's always bad, right? It's not that money's bad. I would never say that or imply that. It's that maybe it should be looked at differently. And this is where I'm going to kind of bridge the conversation. It's like money, it's very difficult to do something of substance when money is the goal, because there's nothing driving the pursuit, right? There's a lot of studies that say once you hit, and the number varies, but roughly 75,000 a year financially, right? When you're secure, money is then becomes indifferent, or we become indifferent to it. As long as we're secure, it doesn't change our quality of life much, right? And then so the obvious question is, well, then what? Once we hit that mark, once we're safe and secure, what? What is our motivator? And that's Daniel Pink's message. It's the 3.0. It's the exploratory space. And he gives a lot of examples of this, right? And I'll give a few where, at a high level, he's got 2 groups of people, and each group has to put a puzzle together. One group's being paid, one group is not. The group being paid does it a lot slower than the group that's not being paid, because they're not thinking about the right thing. They're so focused and channeled on the outcome, on the money, that they can't even immerse themselves in the project, right? It's that much of a disruptor. He talks about art, where art students that write down their purpose and are purpose-driven do better in art school and do better after art school than the ones who are financially driven. Right? Not to mention there's studies like blind contests where the pieces that folks love the most, were created by students who weren't paid to do them, right? There was no, time crunch. There weren't parameters on what they were creating. They just got to create. And one of the more impressive examples he gives is Google, where they went through a period, I think it's 10% now, he was saying, but at the time, 20% of their time was given to do whatever they wanted. right? To just explore, to get into groups, to make whatever they want, create whatever they want. It was their time to get into flow and see what happens. And, you have things like Gmail that came from this. I think he said Google News, Google Talk, which I'm not sure what that is, but, a lot of their big products came from this idea, and it's because the incentive changed, right? The parameters were removed. There was autonomy. There was freedom in what they were doing. And to me, the question becomes, or at least as I was listening to the book, my question was, well, awesome. How do I inject this into my life? How do I move out of the 2.0 and further down the realm of 3.0, right? The intrinsic piece. I've always sort of geared towards that route. Is anyone who creates content for 2 years, right, with very little pay at all, until I saw things start picking up, because I loved what I was doing, and the art or the creation itself was so satisfying that it was my motivation, right? It pushed me forward. But what about on a daily level, right? Because anytime you scale something, I'm doing, for example, a podcast a day, a YouTube video a week, my other podcast, Books to Business, 2 times a week. You start to quantify, you start to scale, and like anything, you kind of, the creativity has to get boxed out a little bit. And it's always the first thing that goes, right? It's motivation 3.0 is always the first thing we try and box out, when it should be the thing we embrace, because it's what creates our results. You need to scale. Yes, there needs to be numbers you hit, but they shouldn't be the focus. They should be a consequence of the intrinsic piece, right? And so we had a chance to interview Daniel Pink the other day. And one of the things he talks about that I loved and related to on a personal note is he wandered. He followed that sense of flow. And sometimes he said it wasn't even flow, it was more curiosity. But, he started out in politics. He was a speechwriter. He was doing political campaigns. Then he realized he loved writing, and he started doing books on certain topics. He says, when I'm 60, I probably won't be writing anymore. I'll be moving on to the next thing. And I love that sense of just excitement and adventure, curiosity towards life. The challenge is, right, it's hard to look in the mirror and see the immediate impact from trying something you're curious to do, or leaving the parameters of what your day to day. But I'm telling you, the greatest things in life, the greatest things you'll ever discover, they live on the fringes. You have to find them. They don't find you. And that is why I wanted to talk about this idea, this new motivation, this 3.0, because it is following that sense of excitement, searching for flow, right? Let's not get so caught up in the effort reward cycle that we end up leaving the best things on the table, right? So maybe it doesn't need to be 20% of your day like Google, but let's make a commitment. Let's make a commitment. If you do it, I'll do it. How's that? Let's take an hour a day, half an hour a day, and do something with no expectation, where you're doing it for the sake of doing it. There's no reward attached. This is self-discovery. We're looking for flow. We're looking to enjoy this moment and maybe find something out about ourselves that we didn't know existed. Guarantee that's the start of something, hopefully amazing. So, on that note, my friends, I'll wrap it up. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Helps me get it out to the world. That is my goal. Thank you for that. And we'll see you tomorrow.